So the talk is about stress. And also, trying to connect to Wi-Fi. Here we go. Okay, thank you, and good morning. I'm just going to check this is working. Good. Okay, thank you very, very much for having me and for bearing with me as I fumble around. It's quite interesting being stressed in front of people, and I think probably if anyone's done some presentations themselves, or the client side or whatever, you know that feeling, okay? It can be exciting, but it can be daunting. But I want to start just by having some gentle interactivity and just trying to work out who we have here today. So can you put your hand up if you are a project manager, delivery, scrum master type person? Great, most of you, that's what I thought. And hands up if you're more of an account manager, business development type person. Okay, oh, one or two, okay. At the top, looking down, checking on all the PMs, good place to be. Is anyone here for comedy? Thank God for that. Oh, come tonight. And is anybody a student or training or wanting to kind of come into PM and sort of learning and coming there for sort of learning? One or two, good. Because you are the people I'm here to save, right? Because project management is one of the more stressful careers out there. And seriously, it's actually been classified as that. So the HSC, they do this thing where they go around and they basically classify all our career types and they put us into boxes so we can have statistics. And they classify digital project management and program management as we're in standard occupational classification number 8, which means we're classified as professionals, right? That makes me feel good, right? We're professionals. My boss thinks I'm a total joker, but the HSE think that I'm a professional. You're a professional too. But can anybody guess which work category has the highest rate of work-related stress, depression, and anxiety?
Dentist.
No? Anyone else? What category? It's professionals. That's us. Look, there we are. You in the stress, and you in the stress, and you in the stress too, and there's some anxiety there. We're way out in front, right? We should all be doing skilled trades. Carpenters, florists, they're the ones that don't have the stress. Okay, so what are we going to do about this stress? Let's make a plan. I feel more comfortable already, or in this case, an agenda, right? So I'm going to do a quick disclaimer and tell you a very small bit about myself. And then we're going to talk about the 4 Noble Truths of Buddhism, because why not? It's a PM conference. And then I'll talk to you about my personal path to ceasing project management suffering. So, quick disclaimer, I'm going to reference the 4 Noble Truths of Buddhism in my talk. Now, these are truths that are generally considered to be sacred, venerable, and wise. Those are 3 adjectives that no one has ever described me as in any way. So, I'm talking here figuratively, I'm using it as an analogy, and I'm hopefully talking respectfully. But if you want to learn about Buddhism, there's lots of great books that I can point in the direction of, but we're really here to talk about project management. So, who the hell am I, and why do I have the arrogance to stand on stage and tell you all about project management? Well, my name is Stephen. Some people call me Steve. Some Danish people call me Stefan. James, the IT guy where I used to work, called me Simon for 8 months, which is beyond passive-aggressive. I've been working in digital for like over 10 years, but to say you've been working in digital for like 10 years is basically going, I have been alive for the past 10 years because everything is digital. This is what it's done to me. I've gone from hair here to hair down here, and essentially that's from going, oh my God, and pulling my hair down as I face stress. But I've worked as roles as kind of project manager, scrum master. I'm doing account management at the moment for small startups, for agencies, and for big multinational enterprise organizations. None of that matters. It's more just to say that when I'm talking here, it's coming from personal experience. This isn't just random conjecture. So, one day, on a particularly long and boring conference call, I clicked the mute button. I mean, God bless whoever invented the mute button, right? I mean, that's the savior of parents and multitaskers the world over. And I started looking at the 4 Noble Truths of Buddhism. And as I'm going to use this as an analogy, I'll give you a quick overview, of kind of what they are. So, the Buddhists say that all life is suffering, and by that, we have pain, we have death, we have loss, but we also have mental suffering, we have anguish, all these types of things going on. And they say the origin of suffering is caused by attachment or desire or craving. And the way I understand this is, imagine it's lunchtime and you suddenly really want a burger. And you can see this gorgeous, juicy burger glistening with sweat, and there's lettuce and there's cheese and tomato, and it's got a perfect brioche bun. And you think, I want that burger. I'm going to go out and get that burger. So you go down the shops, and then you find this restaurant, and maybe only one of three things can happen. Either it's closed, well, and you feel disappointment, sadness, loss. I have to go to Tesco and get a manky cheese sandwich. Or it's open and you get a burger and it's not really that good and you got a bit overexcited. Or actually it is really good, but you have the burger and guess what? Now you want a cold, frosty beverage glistening with beads of. So the point being that often when we desire things, when we either don't get them fulfilled and we feel sadness, or even if we do get them fulfilled, we're constantly moving on to the next thing. We can't stop desiring things. And it's this gap between our expectations of what we think we want and the reality of what life actually presents us that causes this kind of pain and suffering. And the Buddhists say that the way of getting around this is simply sort of living more day to day and following a path that leads to the cessation of suffering and brings enlightenment. So what the hell does this have to do with project management, as interesting as it all is? Well, while being on another call and taking a massive kick-in from a client who was having a go at me and my team for not delivering this and that, I tend to go, when that happens, I go to my calm space and I kind of imagine I'm somewhere else and I think this is part of the job and I'm protecting the team and this is a good thing. But I had this epiphany that actually all project management is suffering. Yeah? You don't believe me? Well, I have seen things that you people would not believe, right? I have seen servers going down 3 hours before launch. I have seen a technical director on his knees begging two developers, an experienced technical director, for just some kind of hacky solution to get the thing live. I have seen redundancies. I have seen lots and lots of tears. I worked next to a guy called Luke, who was a PM on this website for luxury watches. These are the watches that cost more than your house. And he used to get berated every day by his client. His client would call him up and say things like, "You are an imbecile, what are you doing? We are not selling hot dogs here, these are luxury watches." That was his day. And even when you ask for help and people provide help, often it can be more suffering. Has anyone here ever had a project gone sort of red or bad in the ops meeting and you sort of raise your hand and ask for help about it? Few people, yeah? And did you get a nice pat round, arm around your shoulder saying, well, how can we help you? Or did you get, well, what's your philosophy? What are you doing? What's your plan of action? Often when people try and help, sometimes it can feel like more of an interrogation. And so I'm going to ask you now to hopefully you're warmed up enough to reflect on your own kind of personal suffering. So yes, this is where you have to do some work now. So we're going to ask you to join the shrine of failure. So this is a concept that at the Big Zoo, Rob Borley introduced the Church of Fail, but I've changed it for the Buddhist analogy. So we're going to the shrine of failure. The process is really simple, right? Start looking around and making eye contact with people. Don't look at me, look around, okay? And you want to try and make eye contact with someone that you'll feel happy talking with, okay? And then we're just going to do 30 seconds. It's going to get really noisy. And you're going to introduce yourself, just your name, and I want you to recount one very quick story of where you completely messed up at work, a big failure that you encountered. Do I have your support for this? Are you all going to be willing to do it? For me? Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to give you a timer. So in 30 seconds, we're going to get going. Okay, here we are, and go. It might be a bit awkward because I've got, but just kind of carry on. Okay, now I'm going to switch round roles and talk and change stories. Okay, so the other person now tell your story. Okay, and bringing it to the end. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, silence! almost had that kind of primary teacher power there, but thank you for doing that. And listen, if you didn't get time to finish, guess what? There are lots of breaks where you can carry on telling your stories of failure. Why did I do that? Well, a few reasons. One, it just filled up 2 minutes of my talk really easily, and I didn't have to do any slides for it, so top tip. Number two, everyone in this room has suffered, right? And what I love about Deliver Conference is, as Brett hinted, I think you'll learn more talking about your stories of pain and suffering in the breaks than you will listening to me. So if you're here and you don't know some people, why not just go up to them and say, how are you suffering? It's a really interesting way to start a conversation. It's a terrible chat-up line, but it's a really interesting way to get data from people. But also, what you have done is show that you have a growth mindset. So in Black Box Thinking, Matthew Sinnott, he explains that there's essentially people that have a fixed mindset. And they're people that believe that talent is the only reason for success or high performance. Usain Bolt is the best runner in the world because he was born like that. And no one else will ever be like Usain Bolt. But the alternative view is the growth mindset. And that says, look, that talent is a key part of success. But it's only one element. And the other elements that lead to high performance include discipline and practice. But crucially, the capacity to evaluate what one is doing and to see where the weaknesses are, and crucially, to learn from your mistakes. And this mindset really helps me deal with mistakes more easily. So rather than talking about failure, a more positive way of saying I failed is to say I can get better in this particular area. And I think if you're hiding from failure, or you have an organization that is embarrassed about talking about failures, what you're doing is you're missing out on key points of data and feedback that enable you to get better at your job. And I think as leaders, we can do more to encourage cultures of being comfortable with failure and talking about failure. Often you hear about the fail fast stuff, but sometimes people think fail fast and you never fail again. Failure is consistent throughout everyone's career, unfortunately. And reason number 4, you've also just shown that you're comfortable being vulnerable. And there's a talk by Brené Brown that I encourage you to do. By sharing the fact that you have failed, you're now comfortable being vulnerable. And people that are comfortable being vulnerable actually experience less shame. They tend to lead more wholehearted lives. And actually, they can end up being more creative. And finally, why I like doing the Church of Fail or the Shrine of Fail is that it gives you a chance to forgive yourself and other people. So if you have messed up, now is your time, and just here is your absolution. You are forgiven, okay? As long as you didn't kill anybody, it's okay. And the reason why forgiveness is important, both for ourselves and for our teams, is if we don't do that, project mistakes, project issues can actually, I think, stick in our psyche for a lot longer than we give credit for them. And I think these can then become attachments. We get hung up on things that went wrong in the past, and rather than learning from them, we get weighed down by them. And so this leads me on to thinking about suffering being caused by attachments. There's a quote here by Lao Tzu, who is the founder of Taoism. He says, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you're at peace, you are living in the present. Now, I need to be careful here, because I totally accept this is a massive, massive, massive oversimplification of mental illness. There's far more kind of complications than this. But if you look at it from the point of view of where he's referencing depressed as, maybe think of that as feeling low, or anxious as feeling worried, then I'd argue there are some elements of kind of truth in this. Because when I've been most low at work, I've tended to be like looking backwards and kind of think, that week has been rubbish, and the next week is going to be the same, and this project is unending, and it's just going to be like this for ever and ever, and it's never going to get better. And then, guess what? A new project comes along, and I'm like, ooh, hello, new project, right? The chance to do something new. This time, we'll do it better. This time, we won't make those mistakes. This time, we'll get it right. And I love, does anyone else get that new project vitality? Yeah? You know what I'm talking about. That's an interesting thing when you think about it, that can change your whole mindset. So why are we waiting for that new project to come along? And it's kind of why I like Agile, that you can kind of have more regular iterations. But if you're on a death march, waterfall Gantt chart, and it's not going well, you need to sort of re-baseline that project and change it and have a fresh start. Because if you're feeling that way, it's very likely that your team is also feeling that way. And we all need that kind of fresh start to avoid the attachment to all the bad stuff that has already happened, okay? People do their best when they have achievable targets, not being weighed down to some aims and goals that were set 6 months ago and are now completely unrealistic. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. Again, this is a massive oversimplification, but to me, this is one of the cruxes of why I think project management is stressful. Right? Because if you think about it, our job is to constantly project into the future. We're planning, we're managing expectations. And sometimes it feels like it's our job to project this possible future and to try and mitigate all elements that run contrary to it, and to try and encourage confidence and belief that this possible future, is actually going to be a reality and take us there. And like the burger reference, sometimes we don't get there, or sometimes we do get there, and actually it's not that great. But that means there can be quite a neurotic element to our job. We have to come in some days and start thinking about, okay, what if the tester doesn't talk to the developer? What if Jamie's playing Minecraft for 4 hours again rather than actually writing some code? What am I going to do if the sky falls in? And I think because we're often the figurehead that represents the success or failure of the project, that can mean there's a tendency to take on all the stresses and concerns and worries that emanate from the project. And that can lead us away from what I would call constructive planning into this unconstructive projection. So sitting down and writing a risk register with your team is a useful activity. And guess what? By doing it with your team, you get a diversity of thought that you can bring in yourself. Useful. Pacing around your living room on a Sunday evening, wondering if the developers will actually show up for the demo, and thinking maybe if you buy a kitted, you could distract the client if they don't turn up. That's not a useful activity, okay? So being prepared is one thing. Having 10,000 Post-its in your bag just in case the sky falls in is another thing. There's a difference between being the most prepared and being the most anxious. And the difference is the utility of thought. I'm going to show you a clip now from Dan Hall. He was a newscaster. Hopefully this clip will work. And through basically overwork and recreational drugs, he essentially had a massive panic attack live on air. And then after that, he discovered meditation. Just this clip, he says it far better than I could, so that's why I'm going to play it. And he's going to talk about the utility of worry.
One of the best pieces of advice I've ever received in my entire life was from a meditation teacher named Joseph Goldstein. I was asking him about the utility of worry. In the specific context, I was talking about whether it makes sense to worry about missing a flight. And I was arguing to him that, look, you Buddhists are always talking about how thoughts are just thoughts. They don't necessarily have any connection to reality. But the fact is, if I miss my flight, I'm screwed. And he said, you're unquestionably correct. But there's a certain amount of worry that makes sense and a certain amount of worry that doesn't. So on the 17th time that you're worrying about missing your flight and all of the horrible ramifications, maybe ask yourself a simple question. Is this useful? Boom. For a guy who'd spent his whole life worrying and thinking that my worrying was the edge I had over everybody else, because I knew I was going to be more anxious and more compulsive than any of my competitors, I realized there's a certain amount of worrying that is what I call constructive anguish, and then there's useless rumination. That's just making you miserable.
Okay, is this useful? If there's one mantra I could leave you with today, it's, is this useful? I found it so good at kind of cutting through my unconstructive worrying, but it works in so many situations. It works in when you're booking that meeting, is this useful? It works when you're thinking about talking at a meeting. I have a tendency, as you might guess, to open my mouth at meetings and to have half an idea and just to try and keep talking until I get there and see what it's going to be like, and that isn't always useful. So think about that in all that you're doing. So it is possible to end suffering. And specifically, the Buddhists would say that this is when we learn to give up the useless craving and learn to live each day at a time. And I think that's true also in some degree for PMs, and I think a lot of our suffering comes from attachments to our ego and attachments to the project itself. And I've had to deal with and work with some junior PMs who had become really, really stressed at times. And one of the key messages I've had to give several times is the following. You are not your project. Project success does not define who you are. Project failure does not define who you are. Now, that might sound really, really obvious, and maybe it is to you, but the reason I've had to give that advice so many times is I've had to work with people who have become so wrapped up in the project that actually whether the project was going well or badly affected how they felt outside of work. It became kind of part of them. And that put them under tremendous pressure, career-changing pressure. And that's not a good thing in any industry. And I think part of the reason why they felt so much stress is because whether it's company culture or whatever, they thought it was down to them to make that project successful. And I want to be clear here, this is not our job. Right? Our job is not to make projects successful. You can argue our job is to try and make projects successful. You can argue our job is to lead a team in the most efficient way or do any number of things. But our job is not to make projects successful, because the fact is sometimes you can't make projects successful. Sometimes the frickin' stats are just against you, right? Let's look at this. You've probably seen graphs like this. 52% of projects in the industry are considered challenged. 19% have failure. These ones on the right are from 2018. The average cost overrun of all projects was 27%. Only 37% of teams in the UK reported completing projects on time more often than not, right? There's a lot of good PMs out there, and these are rubbish statistics, right? These are Scottish football type statistics, okay? So if you're in a fixed mindset where you're thinking that you have to deliver success with every project, actually you're kind of fighting against the curve, you're fighting against the stats. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Right? That doesn't mean you shouldn't do your best. But if you attach your role as being responsible for the project's success, I think then you're actually missing out on a lot of the nuances and other elements that make this job far more interesting and wonderful than it might be otherwise. And I think other times also, sometimes you're not even in control of the project or in control of the elements. There's Oxfam just in Oxford, basically their offices just got flooded and 800 people are now out of the office and not knowing what to do for the next 3 months, right? Put that in your risk register. But also even when we are delivering plans, sometimes it's not our plan, right, that we deliver. This is an actual, I don't know what you want to call it, a project plan, I guess. I'm breaking NDA here, so hopefully it's not going to get recorded and get back to my... But this is what a PM I worked with inherited from an account and sales team. Okay? If you see anything like this, run a mile, right? What the hell is going on? You've got some nasty gradient fills. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things happening in parallel. Big blue star, we go live there because there's a big blue star, right? This is total nonsense. And the dates, that was 2018. It's still running now in 2019. So there we are. That was that nice, simple project, okay? And when I was younger, I kind of wanted to write fiction. Now I write project plans. The two things are similar in some ways, but in my fiction, I respected the boundaries of space and time. And I think that's it. Often you're not always in control. Sometimes you're under pressure from your business or your account team to say that we will deliver in May, right? Even if you know that that's not really possible. And other times the pressure can come from the client or the end stakeholder. I've had 2 or 3 times some very difficult conversations where I've tried to explain to clients that things aren't going to go the way that they imagined from the start of the project. And they've looked at me and said things like, "I don't care about what you're saying right now. The site will be live by May." It's like, listen, mate, this isn't freaking Harry Potter, right? You can't just Expelliarmus, right? And the site goes live by May. You have to engage with the reality of the situation. And you have to use the evidence that you've seen in the past and historically to make judgments. And I think more importantly, you sometimes, well, often, have to redefine what success means as you go along the way. And that's going back to that fixed mindset. If you have a fixed mindset of what success is, defined 6 months ago at the start of the project, it's very hard to deliver your best work. If you have a growth mindset and you can redefine what success is, then you can actually deliver a lot more value. The analogy I use often when I'm talking to clients is, does anyone here watch Grand Designs? Yeah. So the first 5 minutes of Grand Designs, you get someone going, the stained glass geometric windows are integral to the architectural essence of the building. They are the most important thing we have to do, right? And then 3 advert breaks on. After 6 months of living in a caravan in Wales with no running water, there's something like, "I just want to have a toilet and some running water." Right? Success changes as the project moves along. So if you are faced in a scenario where you kind of have to deliver somebody else's nonsense or someone else's fiction, I would advise you to stop. And I had a PM that I worked with did this, and it was fantastic. And she just created her own project plan. And it's like, this is the project plan I believed in. And that was great for 2 reasons. One, you can show it to a client, and you can kind of say, well, this is a risk you have to bear in mind. And it also gives you that nice kind of, I told you so, when the site does go live in June or July. But also internally, you can then take that kind of rebaselining, and you can go to your boss or the account team and say, look, I don't mind trying to deliver this fiction that you're putting me under pressure to do, but this is a potential reality, and that's looking at 2 months worth of write-off, and if you can give me the backing for that, then fine, I'll jump on board your kind of crazy train. Because, that idea of trusting the data, right? Not the pressure that people put you under is so important. Just because an account manager has maybe had 10 more years experience and say, you can do, or we can do this, right? Or there's different motivations at play. And it is possible to detach yourself from the project and by understanding these things. It isn't always about you. You can't always save the day. And probably for me personally, some of the biggest kind of praise that I've ever received in my whole career has not been for delivering typical project success. Right? These were projects that went over budget, they went over time, but they were kind of gallant failures, right? And actually, nobody died, the client had a good time, and we delivered some really, really good stuff. And everybody could see that the decisions made along the way were sensible decisions, and actually it was communicated effectively. And at the end of the day, we delivered something of value rather than something that's on time and on budget, but actually no one's using it or it doesn't serve any purpose. So again, what does success mean? If you run an on-time, on-budget project and you lose 2 developers because of stress, right, that's a failure for your company. But there is a path to end suffering. And the Buddhists talk about the Eightfold Path. So I'm going to again use this as an analogy, and I'm going to try and recount my kind of 8 truths that have helped me deal with stress and drastically reduce the amount of work stress that happens in my life. I'm not immune to stress, definitely. I haven't eliminated it from my life. But I can confidently say I am less stressed than I used to be, and I'm definitely sleeping better. So this is what I've used to try and help me get there. Love the people, trust the data. And what I mean by this is that we are all imperfect people in an imperfect world trying to do our best. But people are way more fun to work with than Excel spreadsheets. If you want accuracy, you can work with an Excel spreadsheet. But if you want to work, with fun people, you will have more fun and engagement working with people. Unless you're like my friend Sarah that used to prefer actually Excel spreadsheets to people, but she was kind of a bit different. But people are far less accurate, right? And you have to love them for this. And there's a reason for it. You've got to love the fact that we have 192 cognitive biases. Go on Wikipedia and look at how many cognitive biases we face. We have confirmation bias, optimism bias, all of these things that are making us make bad decisions. And yet we still come to our developers and our team and say things like, oh, well, the client wants to build Facebook for pets. How long is it going to take? And expect them to somehow get this thing right. Estimation is a terrible thing. I've sort of stopped doing planning poker and just do planning roulette, and we spin the wheel and pick some numbers sometimes. But actually, the best and the most highest performing development team I've ever worked with, really, really senior people who knew what they were doing, they were still consistently wrong with their estimates by a factor of 2.25. And I know that because I worked it out, and it was the best team to work with, because guess what? They were consistently wrong. So every time they said it would take an hour, it would take 2.25 hours. And I could use the historical data to then have some sort of predictability. And I didn't want them to change what they were doing. They were great, they were flawed, but they were, there's that idea of, they provided the insights and the ideas of how we were going to approach complex problems. But the numbers I could get by looking more to the past. So just remember, it's a real blessing to work with interesting people, but they are flawed. If you want to work with, precision accuracy, you can work with machines, but you'll have more fun working with people. Look after yourself so you can look after those around you. Right? Everyone here should know the basics about dealing with stress. Drink water, exercise, sleep well. I'm not going to go over that because you should know that. You should know that staying up till 1 in the morning, drinking whiskey and writing a proposal is not going to be good for you in the long term. But I think it's important to recognize you have a stressful career. So it is in your interest to invest in whatever activities you find helps you deal with that stress. Okay, that's just part of it. It's a good career, but being stressed is rubbish. So why would you not choose to kind of counterbalance that or work against it? And when thinking about stress, there's a definition I like. There's other definitions of stress, but I like this definition. When the demands placed on you exceed the resources that you have available. And why I like this definition of stress is it helps me think about stress as an equation. So, it's kind of important to sort of know your stress triggers and to know your stress symptoms. So when I get stressed, I tend to get, uptight. And if I'm not sleeping, then I really know that I've kind of become sort of too stressed about something. And by thinking of this definition, I can think of it as an equation. So What are the demands being placed on me? What don't I have enough resources to deal with this? Often it's time, but sometimes it's things like energy. You know, the client is draining me and I need just some more energy to kind of deal with the 5 phone calls a day that they're dealing with me. And I think by doing that, it's a much more constructive to go to your boss or your team and say, you know, rather than saying I'm stressed, to say, you know, I need more time or I need more energy. But this also applies to helping others. So at the start, I was talking a bit about when people try to help and what you get is an interrogation. And I think often when that happens, those are well-meaning people, but they don't have the time or the energy to actually engage with your current situation. So when you are trying to help other people, you can, you know, think about it first before you take on their problem. So you can always offer good advice, like go home, take a day off, you know, but if you actually want to sit down and help them with their challenge, you have to make time to do that. And if you're stressed yourself, it could be a bad situation. You can end up making yourself feel worse, and you can end up not really helping them. You know, you sort of have to love yourself at some level before you can love another person, right? Otherwise, you don't understand what love is. And you have to have some sort of idea of what peace with your work is before you can begin to provide that peace to other people. Cultivate a growth mindset. I talked about this a bit before, so I won't go too much on it, but you know, in the whole Agile Onion, they talk about the mindset being the most powerful thing, and I think it's also one of the hardest things to achieve. And often you're not fully in control, but you can create that growth mindset within your teams. Again, it's talking about how did we fail, how can we do things better, understanding that it's not always, you know, I've had projects where it was 4 sprints and it was supposed to be agile, but everything was meant to be delivered within 4 sprints and there was no remit. And it's like, that's not a growth mindset. That's assuming that success is delivering everything, okay? So if it's not in, you know, if you don't have this fail, reflect, learn, improve attitude, if it's just no failure must deliver, and you're trying to do something like Agile or calling it Agile, it's a bit kind of Dolce and Banana, right? It looks okay at first, but actually it's just not the real deal. Be thankful when you're consciously incompetent. So when you mess up, and you will mess up, because remember all of those cognitive biases that we have, you can either beat yourself up for it, or you can recognize that you have just become conscious of an area or a weakness where you can start to improve. And through honest reflection and feedback, you can then begin to do something about this. So in the whole mastery of hierarchy of competence, for me, you know, this is the most interesting place to be, because this is where you can actually start to do things, right? A lot more people are here than they think, and I think we often drift into here, especially people that have been experienced and have 10 years, and they suddenly think, well, I can't be incompetent. But you can be incompetent in a lot of minor ways. You can be incompetent in the way that you run a stand-up. You can be incompetent in the way that James called me Simon for like 8 months, right? There are minor things. And that's why I think having this feedback loop is so important. It's so easy to think that you're actually doing a great job, or to be scared and not want to ask. And then you miss out on that chance to improve. You just kind of, you know, bask in your glory. And I think you can do stuff like, you know, after every meeting, after every call, just saying things like, how did we do? Did we do well? Could we have done that better? Starting to encourage that feedback loop more within your teams. You can do well, or you can do good, but you can't work against your values and still be happy. So I've definitely come to realize the hard way that if your values aren't in line with the place that you work, you'll be carrying around a lot of background stress. You'll either be carrying around the stress of, you know, trying to fit in with stuff that you don't really feel comfortable with, or you'll be standing on the outside and you'll be ranting against it and kind of using up your energy in that way. Because I think there is a spiritual element to everything we do with work. How you choose to earn your living and make your money and pay for your food goes to the core of our values. And if your job is in conflict with your values, I would suggest one of 3 things will happen. Either you'll leave your job, either your values will change, or you will be really miserable. Just don't let it be the 3rd one for too long. There was a talk that Sam Barnes gave where his premise was you can do well or you can do good. And essentially, we often see success as quite binary, right? Either you succeed or you don't succeed. But if you succeed or you get promoted or you make money at the cost of your ethics, then, you know, what are you actually doing? And tech, unfortunately, tech and digital, even if your agency is the loveliest thing, tech can still be a really, really cutthroat, confrontational, and quite white male-dominated world at times. And there are places I've worked at that have, you know, kind of shocked me. I've been lucky enough to work for some really, really lucky places, but it isn't a utopia yet. And you can either work with that or you can sort of try to do something about it. And it can be from looking at how your company recruits people. Working for your values is far, far more beneficial than working for just delivering project success for somebody else's values. Know what you can influence and what you can't, and make the most of what you can. I am a big believer that we as PMs have far more power than we actually give ourselves credit for. So after this whole conference, right, you could either go back to your sort of CEO and say, I saw all these great ideas, we need to change this, this, and this. And I would kind of argue that actually nothing will happen. Or you can go back to your project teams and you can say, right, I saw these 2 great ideas, I want to try them just within the team for 2 weeks. Are you willing to take it on? Let's just try it and see how it goes. And you're more likely to have success. And when I've seen teams do that, when I've seen project leaders change the team culture, that culture starts to radiate outwards. It can be anything from doing your stand-ups outside, I don't know, doing yoga, having a day where you go out the office. Kind of often if you don't need to ask for permission, right? You just go on and do it. And when you have success with that, that culture definitely does radiate outwards. People look at it and they take notice. People want to work on the happy, fun team that gets shit done, right? They don't really want to work on the stressed, angry team that is kicking cans down the road and getting really angry. And so that links actually to this concept from the Stephen Covey book. Now, I used to hate this book. I hadn't read it, but I just hated the title because I thought anybody that describes themselves as like an effective person reminded me of those sort of Sunday morning magazines where it's like, I get up at 6 in the morning, I eat 10,000 chia seeds and do 50 press-ups and, go, and it's like, okay, can the effective people please let the ineffective people get to the coffee machine? So, but what the concept, so I learned 2 things through reading it. One, it's not good to have prejudices. You cannot judge a book by its cover. But 2, Covey, he talks about this circles of influence, circles of concern, which really kind of hit home with what I was going through at the time. So the concept is very basic, is you have your circle of concern. These are all the things that worry you, concern you, that you're passionate about. Your company software, your boss, the kind of, the way that kind of things are contracted, right? But often you don't always have control over those elements. But then you have the circle of influence, which is the same stuff that worries you or concerns you, but things that you can actually do things about. What time you turn up, how you run the team scrum, what meetings you have a week. And the idea is if we just focus on the circle of concern, you end up being very reactive. You end up ranting and going, I can't do my job right because my boss is a jerk or our software's crap. You're kind of standing outside, but you're not actually doing anything. Whereas if you focus on that circle of influence, you get that culture where, like I say, things are radiating outwards. You're changing your scrum team, or you're changing your project team, and people are noticing, and actually your influence grows over time. This concept has really helped me with my Brexit stress. So I used to get still do get a little bit stressed about Brexit, but I kind of realized I've become a lot calmer with it, realizing that there are just certain things in life that I have no control over, right? And actually, that doesn't mean I can't engage with them or kind of read about them, but to rant about things on Twitter or to shout in the ether isn't doing me any good. But then there are things that I can influence, and actually by focusing on them, it makes me a lot happier because I'm actually doing something about it. Even if you feel like a fraud, it's logical that actually you are an amazing fraud. So imposter syndrome is about one of the most common causes of stress that I hear. And on PM Slack chats, you hear it all the time. I feel like an imposter. I've got imposter syndrome. You hear it from very senior people to very junior people. And it is very stressful. But when you think about it, it's quite illogical. There's a talk by Jo Franchetti that I encourage you to check out. And in this, she talks about the duality of imposter syndrome. So if you're going around at work worrying that everyone is more intelligent and more accomplished than you are, it also stands to reason and is logical that your colleagues are so gullible that you, a complete under-talented fraud, have actually tricked them into believing that you belong. She talks about this duality of imposter syndrome. She calls it Schrodinger's imposter syndrome. And when you think about it, this duality cannot exist. And so logically, you must be the best person for your job. That doesn't mean that you are the most experienced person, but it might actually mean that you have the most time or the most energy. Often we sometimes think that it's the most experienced people that will do the best of it, but actually they might be busy on 5 other things. So you kind of have to believe in yourself and recognize that imposter syndrome is an illogical state to be in. Finally, I would encourage you all to find your own personal meditation. So I became a lot happier at my work when I realized a few things and did a few things. So firstly, I realized we live in a really growth market for digital project management, okay? You can look at the stats, right? Companies are actually crying out for digital project managers that know what they're talking about. So again, if your job isn't with your values, you have more leeway than you might think, okay? It doesn't take long to get a new job in this sort of arena that we're in. And then the other thing that I did was I started getting up 10 minutes earlier, and I got to work 10 minutes earlier. And I didn't go into work. I came to this nice, lovely little spot by the side of my work. And essentially, I just sat down, and I did my little meditation app, and then kind of got ready for the day. Now, I'm not actually here to sell you meditation. It actually really worked with me and really helped me. But the big thing, my big takeaway from this is having that agency over how you start your day. So the minute you walk in those doors, you're fighting fires, or your life is gone, right? You're now owned by work. By taking that time to do whatever it is, stretching, yoga, reflection, anything that's a bit more grounding than just kind of having your headphones in and going straight through the door, that gives you that agency over how you start your day. And by doing that, I was more prepared and kind of had a bit more energy and a bit more clarity about where I was going to go. And then because I'd cultivated this little spot, when I had a stressful morning, at lunchtime I could go back out and go in there and kind of recharge, or even at the end of the day I could take 5 minutes to do that. And even in wintertime, I just got into the habit of booking a meeting room and would go in there, and everyone thought I was working, but I was just kind of doing my Zen thing. And it really, really helped me to sort of control the events that unfold throughout the day. So whatever it is you do, I urge you to find some sort of personal solace or space or a short activity that can help you deal with a tough day. So that is about everything from me. I don't know how I did, but I would welcome your feedback. You can feedback me on Twitter, or you can actually talk to me. I've referenced some of the great thought leaders and Sam Barnes in my notes here. So I encourage you to kind of do some Googling or read their books and check out the talk. Again, remember the mantra, is this useful? And finally, I think, please look after yourselves and the people you work with. This can be a really, really tough and stressful industry to work with. I've had to work with some people who have, had extended leave from work, and no work or no project is ever that important, right? That it should have that kind of impact on your life. And we do have the power to change some things. We can't always completely change toxic environments, but you can do a lot to make your teams and the area around you more kinder, and make it a better environment to work in, and make it better for us and for those that we also lead. Thank you very much for your time and for letting me open Deliver Conference. That's me.
Thank you, sir, for kicking us off today. Does anybody have any questions for Stephen? We have a few minutes for questions. Stick your hand up high. Here we go, right here. Let me give you the mic so everyone can hear your question.
It's not so much a question as a statement of agreement with you. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had a slight meltdown with stress over project management, as I felt it was all getting a bit too much for me, and I wasn't delegating enough, which increased the stress. One of the things I have done, as well as finding my own spaces, is to just take all my work stuff off my personal phone. I don't know how many people do that. And all the calendars, all the Jiras off my personal phone and onto an older phone. And at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever time I finish, that just goes off.
Yeah.
And someone sent me a hangout at 4:59 p.m. I don't know if I should have still been at work by then. But I just ignored it.
Yeah.
I thought I could answer this. I thought, no, I've had enough today, so I'll just leave it. So
it's really good.
Look after yourself.
I was working in Denmark for a couple of years, and their culture is just very much 4 o'clock, that's it, or 4:30. But it's a really, really, really hard stop. I mean, some people kind of email in the evening, but I think also, if you ever have that sinking Sunday feeling, that's a really bad sign where you're kind of like your Sunday is not good because you're worrying or you're anxious about the week ahead. Okay, and you can't necessarily like flip a switch and change it, but I think you can recognize that and start to take steps. Things like burnout is quite common in this industry, and so kind of how can we be kinder and how can we have this definition and splitting work and life. And I think that's if an email comes at 6:30 and you respond to it, right, then you're saying it's okay to your team, and then the email comes at 7:30, and then you as a leader with the team, if you say, okay, this is how we're going to operate, this is how I'm going to operate because we have to deliver it, you're creating that culture that's hard. And one thing I liked about kind of the Danish culture, right, if everyone leaves at 4:30, if all the juniors kind of leave at 4:30, right, you can't do anything. So then all the seniors go, well, there's no point in being here, so I have to leave. And then all the managers are like, well, it's kind of this sort of union of like, let's all just piss off at 4:30, right? It's great, And actually, I think there's an awful lot of wasted hours. There's talking about the wasted worry of, yes, you might write, answer a few emails and stuff, but it's kind of, I don't think projects get delivered any faster by working on a Sunday or working till midnight, right? I do it, I've done it a lot, and I'm rubbish the next day. And so kind of, there is this sort of this theory of like, having focused work time, having Pomodoro technique, that those are the most efficient people who can just come in, work, do their job, and then focus on stuff that makes them recharged and full of energy the next day. So yeah.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, here we go, back here. I love running around. I'm going to trip over someone, I'm sure.
Thank you. Really enjoyed that. I think the growth mindset and success thing was quite interesting. I wondered whether you've come across any techniques when you're kicking off a project to have that conversation. I certainly have, around sort of setting principles and getting into the client's mindset of what success looks like to try and align that baseline at the beginning so everyone's not as stressed. I wondered if you've come across any techniques to help get the clients into that mindset to be prepared for failure, and we'll all learn and develop to help them get to that place as well. Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the harder things of our role, because I'm doing a bit of account at the moment, and so when you're kind of account, your job is to go in and say, hey client, this is going to be a dream, we've got the best team in the world, we'll get it done in like 6 months, you're going to have a lovely time. And then you hand over to deliver, right? And then it's your job to go, well actually, you're working with 2 students and a guy called Fred that we've contracted in who's got no experience with WordPress or something, and so that's a hard message to give. So what I've definitely done is I don't think we focus enough on kind of client education. Certainly with Agile, there's like a lot of just buzzword Agile stuff out there, but actually talking to them about what it is. And so if you can have a period of education, and I go through often the grand designs analogy, I talk about things may change, right? We have to be, especially on 6 months project, it's crazy to define stuff up front and then not learn from user testing along the way. And I also like I've done kind of project projections when I was doing, like in Jira you have a kind of when will the project finish, but different kind of timeline projections and going, well, if we work at this rate, we will get done by May. But there's a chance if things go wrong that it might be June or July. So that you're setting this kind of anchor of like, it's not all on time and on budget. And what will you do? What's your plan B, right? And I think, yeah, that's a huge thing. It's a hard thing with some clients because they still, and definitely the bigger organizations still think, I'm coming along, I want to buy a project, here is my money, give me my project in May, right? They don't have the time, the engagement. So yeah, I think if you can do an initial education week about the ways of working, about project risks. Doing a risk assessment is quite interesting as well, because you can ask all these questions like, what will you do if the site does not go live? What is your plan B? And I think if I have had a few clients that don't have a plan B, that kind of concerns me, and you can then do something about that or even talk about it a bit more. But yes.
Well, great. I think that's probably all the time that we have, but cool. I'm sure, Stephen, you'll be hanging out for the day, so if people
Definitely,
have questions, want to talk.
Yeah.
Great. Let's give one more round of applause for Stephen. Thank you.